Normally I give people 5 minutes late time, but I figure here in the Sunshine Coast 10 minutes is probably better.
Ooh, half an hour.
Just being silly.
I'm speaking the truth.
Figured you had it turned on.
Shit, I forgot that part.
Right on. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. This is the first ever Hempology 101 event in the Sunshine Coast, and so I'm very happy to be here. And my name is Ted Smith. I'm sure most of you know that by now, but I'm here today to talk about a number of cannabis-related issues that are obviously important to everyone here and hopefully those listening. And after relatively short talk for me, I'm going to open up the floor to questions about the different things that I'm doing or happening in the world at large. So I guess the three topics that I'm going to really focus on today are my work with Hempology 101 and my book, my work with the Cannabis Buyers Club and selling medical marijuana and the new regulations that are coming in regarding medical marijuana. And finally, at the end, I'm going to throw in a little bit of a pitch for Dana Larson's campaign to decriminalize cannabis, which is something that I'm quite committed to. It's not as much as Dana, but it's certainly an inspiring and important campaign that I think people need to be a part of. And so, yeah, I guess my roots with this work go back to Hempology 101. I'm from Ontario, 7th-generation farmer on both sides, and went to university in Ontario, Wilfrid Laurier, wanting to become an accountant, and then switched really from economics to philosophy about halfway through as I began to learn more about the world. And so I left school wanting to become a writer and came out to the West Coast in 1994 with my degree fresh in hand. And one of the first things I saw on the coast was the beautiful rainforest of the Clayoquot Sound. But it was hard not to stare at the mountains that had been, I describe it as taking a paint scraper to the mountainside, because it literally looked like that. They were just raw. There's just open rock and earth where they had just taken the vegetation off. And it was very dramatic for me to see that, because I'd come to the coast to see this beautiful rainforest. But, that was the summer that the 1,000 people were arrested on the bridge there because it had been such a horrific sight for so many people. Anyway, soon after seeing that, I moved to Vancouver and settled there and came across the Hempology 101 meeting, which was when it really clued into me how the corporations essentially and rich people had taken this plant away from the community and my family being farmers in particular, and we've all suffered for that. And I've been a pot user, and I've been known as Acid Head Ted since I started university in my rugby days. So actually I was a very outspoken anti-prohibitionist drug dealer in university. And then learning about this whole so-called Reefer Madness campaign or conspiracy really gave me a focus in life where I thought I could educate people about this plant and the prohibition of it and all of the reasons why it was wrong, and that it was essentially advocating for my family, for the agricultural communities, for plant-loving peoples, and even Mother Earth itself, that we needed to desperately switch from this fossil fuel, petrochemical sort of gulag into back, you could say, to our roots and using more natural products that are healthier for us and everyone around us. So it really occurred to me that as an environmentalist, as a human being, that we needed to embrace the cannabis plant and put it to its fullest potential. And so that's what got me involved in all of this. It had nothing to do almost with smoking pot. It was a benefit. It was something that really brought the group together. together. But if that's all it was, I never would have actually gotten to this point. It was all about being an advocate for my family of farmers. So I came across these weekly meetings in Vancouver that were just vibrant, really. It was being put on by staff of Mark Emery's Hemp BC, and I thought it was a wonderful thing that needed to happen everywhere. That just Vancouver wasn't enough, so I decided to branch to Victoria, have Wednesday night meetings, so I could go to the Tuesday night meeting in Vancouver and be fresh Wednesday night with the news from Vancouver and what was happening, pamphlets and all that. So September '95, made the move over to Victoria and started up a club at the university there, which has grown now into the largest student club on campus. We've done a lot at the university as well because in educating the public, it seemed like that was the best and most important place to start was at universities, and educate the educators was sort of my thinking. And so I have done everything I can to nurture a club at the university by holding all sorts of different kinds of events. In about a month from now, we're going to have our 14th annual cannabis convention at the university, where I get a bunch of speakers together for a day and just kind of gather the forces, you could say. And it's really a great networking opportunity and educational opportunity for people that are often more in the background. A lot of cannabis activists aren't out in the community sharing their stories quite often. So the conventions have been a great opportunity for that kind of networking, community building. But we do a bunch of other things there as well. We started up 420s back in the 90s, and the weekly 420s have become one of the most popular events on campus now. And so it hasn't been without its troubles. Back in November 2000, they sent undercover police to pretend to get a toke off a joint I was passing at the 420. They arrested me in the parking lot after and charged me with trafficking. They didn't have the nerve to do it in front of the students, which in some ways really backfired, because the following week there was 100 students there in protest of my arrest. 3 times the number that were there when I was actually sharing joints, and it actually made the meetings much more popular and gave students and other people an opportunity to speak out against these laws. And the administration left the group alone while I wasn't allowed there. And then as soon as I was allowed back after the court had finished, I started up a free non-credit lecture series as well, which happens before the 420 every week. So we're into our 8th year of the weekly non-credit lecture series. I have 22 different classes that I've decided to is that somebody trying to get in?
There's another door.
Okay.
It says use other door.
Oh, does it? Okay. So yeah, I've got 22 different topics that we've decided to focus on. Hey, Stephen. Um, so we've videotaped a lot of them and put them up on YouTube as well. And so you can watch a lot of the past lectures. I get a bunch of guest speakers in for different issues or different topics. Like we traditionally bring Dr. Paul Hornby in for a chemistry lesson, which has been fantastic to even see the evolution of his work over the years. As he's been learning and sharing some of his knowledge about cannabis and its different uses and strains and things that are out there. And so it's been really great for me to have guest speakers. I prefer that than to speak myself. And so yeah, so we do all those things, and I've also expanded Hempology onto other universities. We're now, I think, operating on about 9 universities and colleges across Canada. Now that my book's out, I've been trying to tour as much as I can and focus on schools and getting campus clubs going. So now we have one at UBC, the one at VIU in Nanaimo is not doing too well right now. But we got one at Medicine Hat College in Alberta. We got one in Mount Allison University in New Brunswick, and we have clubs forming at PEI University, Dalhousie in Halifax, University of Ottawa, and University of Guelph. So we've got some just starting up, that are really waiting until September to kind of kick off and fully incorporate. But it's been really wonderful putting that together, because the students are very keen to learn about this plant and its history, why it's been prohibited and all of its uses and what we can do to try and bring it back. So working with students is really what I love to do more than anything else. And so yeah, so that's hempology on that end of things. Um, and yeah, I guess um, the reason that the book took 17 years to print is because I got distracted with the Cannabis Buyers Club, which I'll get to in a second. I'm just going to give a little promo for my book. You'll notice it's the fourth edition. The first three were all printed on hemp and were bound together by hemp twine. Do you still got yours too, Doug? Did you ever get one?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I have.
It's
Yeah, probably.
probably stored away. Yeah, I only printed
somewhere.
100 of each of the first three
Right.
editions, and so they're rare treasures for some people. But it was something that I wanted my books to be printed on hemp paper from the beginning. I really wish that this one would have been printed on hemp, but it just isn't possible. There's not that quality or quantity of paper available at this point. But that is my goal. Um, anyway, yeah, so it's been quite a long journey to get the book out, but I'm super stoked with it. I've had a really great team put it together with the graphic designer and stuff that I'm very happy with it. There are a number of corrections for the next edition, but you hopefully won't notice them. So luckily, we were able to publish it ourselves. Because of my relationship with the Buyers Club, I was able to pay for a lot of the graphic designing and editing and all that sort of stuff from the resources of the Buyers Club. And so the cost of the book has been much less than it would be if I would have had to have either borrowed that money or somehow paid for it otherwise. So really fortunate to have the Buyers Club help sponsor it. Cover price is $24.95. I sell it for $20, and I would like to think it's the most comprehensive book on the subject. When I started to think about it 17 years ago, I wanted to write the whole story of the plant, with really one exception. I do a little bit about growing outdoors in here, but it's not a book about growing pot. I'm not an expert in that in any way, and really that's better left to entire books by themselves. So that's about really the only thing I don't touch on in the book. But I wanted to write a really comprehensive kind of full story, and glad that nobody did it in the meantime. Every time I saw a new book on the subject, I'd be like, oh, I hope that doesn't do what I want it to do, you know? And there's books about pot out there that might not cover the hemp story or the ancient history part, but this one here ties it all together. I owe a lot to my friend Chris Bennett, who's written 3 books on the history of cannabis. His most recent, Cannabis, the Soma Solution, is really the epitome of his work. It's a really excellent composition, not only of his first couple of books, but it adds in the history of prohibition within Islam and India, and so it is really a great book of world history of cannabis, really. And so I owe a lot to Chris for helping put together the first chapter on ancient history here. The next 2 chapters are on hemp, and I would like to think I've really helped sum it up in a way that people can understand its uses and how easy it is to grow. And you know, even hemp farmers could probably pick this up and go with it. They wouldn't need much more information than what's in here. But the 4th chapter is on medical cannabis and its various applications, and the impacts of using cannabis as well, just for recreational users, like the harms of it. Because far too many people in the movement will claim that there are no potential harms of cannabis, and it is a very powerful plant that some people have negative reactions to. I've seen it, I've heard of it. It would be irresponsible to deny it and to suggest that you can smoke whatever you want as much as you want and have no potential ramifications is wrong. Although I must say I smoke probably more pot than most people around there, and it doesn't stop me from running 10K marathons in big pot leaf costumes. So it's not as harmful as the, you know, it has been said to be. But there are risks, and so I try to give a balanced approach to the plant and not just give my opinion of it, but try to give a scientific and comprehensive overview of the different impacts of using cannabis. I do a chapter on prohibition, going back to ancient prohibition, so it kind of isn't a chronological book in that sense, but I think it's important for people to understand that Prohibition goes back, in history, religious history in particular, for thousands of years. And Chris Bennett's second book, Sex, Drugs, Violence in the Bible, really does a great job of explaining the history of Prohibition. But again, I've tried to sum it up into a chapter, so you don't have to read a whole book if you're not into it. Then I have a few chapters on sort of the revival of cannabis, you could say, and its resurrection in the last few decades. And I think it's important for people to understand, kind of how we got here. And a lot of us wonder like why it's not legal by now, and it's hard to point fingers at different things. But actually, in this edition compared to the third, I did a lot of research on this end of things and learned some things myself. That for example, there's something called the Bourne Incident. Has anyone here heard of the Bourne Incident? Okay, 1975, Normal was having their 5th annual conference in Washington, D.C. Had like all these top lawyers from Washington. It was their 5th year. They had decriminalization ballots on a whole number of states throughout the U.S. Jimmy Carter was president. He had an advisor, Robert Bourne, who was very pot friendly. He was working with them. They were changing the information they were putting out. Richard Nixon's war on drugs was being dismantled on a daily basis until they had this big 5th anniversary. They had this great big wine and dine dash and a beautiful big conference center. Robert Bourne showed up when they were in the middle of the party, and they took him upstairs, and instead of blazing joints with them in a room of about 20, 25 people, the guy started doing lines of coke right in the middle of the room. No pictures were taken, but the organizers of the Normal event were immediately taken aback by what was happening, but they didn't stop it. They seemingly couldn't. And about a month later, or weeks later, it started to appear in tabloids that Robert Bourne, the drug advisor for Jimmy Carter, was doing coke at the Normal conference. That hit the fans. Robert Bourne got sacked. The drug administration ended up getting completely turned around because Jimmy Carter was not going to be portrayed as a pro-cocaine president. And that moment, that party threw us back decades, and we're still suffering from it today. So, there's a lot of things that have happened, that really have put movement off more than ahead, that aren't known about. That's not a story that Normal tells people about very often. It's the truth. And so this movement is full of all sorts of just wild incidents like that, and crazy people that have done things that, for good or bad, have moved things along in one sense or another. So, and then towards the end of the book, I give overview of what's been happening in Canada as well. I don't think there's another book that talks about what's been happening in Canada with hemp becoming legal, with the medical marijuana access regulations, and the evolution of dispensaries, and the case law in the country that's really helped bring us to where we are today. So I think I've done a fairly good job of summing up what's been happening with Mark Emery and all the other things happening in Canada here in the movement. And put a little bit of my opinion at the end. I try to give some thoughts and encouragement about things that could be happening and where things are going. And it's kind of funny reading it now that cannabis has become legal in Washington and Colorado states, because a lot of what I was hoping for a year or so ago when this was being put together is even being seen to this day. So it's really exciting to have this book out at the moment in history where it seems you could say a watershed moment in history where it seems as though we're on the precipice of some massive and hopefully never-ending changes towards the legalization of this plant. So I'm super stoked to have it out now. It's been great to tour around and promote, but there's a lot more going on than that. So I'm going to switch gears to the Buyers Club now. So I lived in my van September '95 when I started my work with Hempology, and it was actually one of the most ideal times of my life. But I started meeting people that were sick. And in particular, there's a lot of gay men with AIDS in Victoria dying within almost months of diagnosis of the disease. And so um, that was, I guess, a hot topic, if you call it that. But I met a woman who made cookies and sauce, Leslie Doug knows her. She made a whole bunch of different products that I'd never heard of before, like a skin cream made out of cannabis. It seemed quite unusual, but nevertheless, it seemed quite practical. We put other plants into these various ointments. Why wouldn't we use cannabis too? And then I started to hang out at her place, and her partner, sold some pot at the time, and people with AIDS would come by, and it became clear to me that the people that smoked it, that were sick, would be able to maintain their lives and stabilize it for the most part. But those that actually ate it as well would turn their lives around. And it was becoming known in the AIDS community that, yeah, smoking pot's good for you, but if you start eating it, you'll put weight back on. You'll feel like going out and maybe even go back to work. I know of cases where people, were able to go back to work and stay that, at work for years. One of the most compelling stories I have is this little guy, Robbie, who's not very big at all, and he got pneumonia. Back then, pneumonia and AIDS, it's like, okay, well, that's goodbye. I went to the hospital and said goodbye to him in the hospital. And it was looking really bad, so his friends were like, okay, well, you guys aren't doing anything for him. He's dying, we're taking him home. He's gonna die at home. So they took him home and started just shoving the pipe in his mouth and making him smoke the pipe. And just started coughing shit up, and then it started coughing really nasty shit up. And eventually cleared his lungs out with the pot. And he was up and running around for 6 more months. And he shouldn't. It was pretty clear how bad a state he was in. So seeing that, and I think actually I'd already started the club by the time I'd experienced that. So that was more affirming than it was something that, made me get into it. And so, yeah, being a committed cannabis activist, it wasn't hard to commit myself to people that were sick and dying. So I got a pamphlet, a pager, and started to help people. Within a few months, got an apartment, operated out of the apartment for about 4 years. And then I guess a couple things happened. I mentioned before I got busted up at UVic in November 2000. A week after that, I got arrested at an annual pot cookie giveaway. I really liked giving out pot cookies, and the police let me do it the year before, but the year I tried to make 420 cookies, they couldn't resist, so they arrested me for that. That only made me more popular in my work with the Cannabis Buyers Club, because I was in the media being arrested at these public giveaways and referring to the fact that I was still at home selling medical marijuana to sick people. So I had to hire people at that point because I got too busy. So it went from a one-man operation that I was literally 6 days a week making all the cookies and everything myself at that point to having to hire people to manage all the growth of the organization. And so about 4 months after that, they actually tried to arrest me in my apartment while they were arresting a friend of mine selling pot downstairs. He figured he may as well set up and sell to everybody else that I wasn't helping, and that really didn't work so great. But the police couldn't get a warrant, so they told me to go get a store. And so we did. And opened up Ted's Books, which is something that's still hard to convince people doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, it was a fly-by-night operation. We set up a bookstore up front. In the back room, we set up a medical dispensary and opened up for business. Went great for about 9 months until the police raid started. The first police raid was from someone who I had cut off for reselling pot. He brought the police in an attempt to shut me down out of vengeance for cutting him off. The judge in the case determined that not only were we helping people with medical necessity when the government wasn't, but that we obviously weren't in it for profit because we were cutting off people that were buying too much. And so the judge acquitted me on that, and Colby, I think, was on that too. Anyway, The second raid was from someone that apparently was reselling our pot for his cocaine habit. Third raid, one of our members assaulted someone down the street, and the guy followed her with his phone and told her where he was, or where she was. Police came and got her that day from the club, and then came back the next day with a warrant. And then the final raid was actually the drug squad. That was a kind of scary one, where the drug squad targeted us and wanted to shut us down. And they couldn't. The judges have let us out after being arrested. We've opened up sometimes within hours of the raids, sometimes maybe the next day, but we've never gone a single day without selling medicine out of that store. And so our determination has really put them back, I think, and it's done us quite well. And we haven't been raided. This is 10 years this month, actually, that the store has been raided. And actually, you know, things have changed quite a bit, and I'll get to that in a moment. So, yeah, so we beat every single charge in court and kept growing in various ways. And then the last police interaction was in a bakery in December 2009. Really, it was kind of a fluke raid. There was a little old lady living next door, and my friend Owen is a DJ, and he'd come in every afternoon and play his dubstep, and that drove her crazy. And then it was sort of known that nobody was really living there, because there's never anybody there at night, and people, there's any number of people with keys coming and going. And then some guy down the hallway was making isopropanol kind of hash oil. And so the smell was tied to our apartment. The manager told me after, if he'd known it was us, he just told us to move. Honestly, it was a shitty apartment. We knew it was a bad place. We didn't want it there in the first place, but it was a struggle to find any place to have our kitchen at all, and that's what we settled with. So the raid occurred because of the complaints, obviously. My friend Owen got charged with trafficking THC for making the cookies and the skin products. But the circumstances of the raid couldn't have been much better. He had possession of less than a gram. He had a couple of joints that he was going to smoke later. But there wasn't a single ounce of leaf or bud in the rest of the apartment. We did all the infusions at the store. So there's nothing but butter and cookies and extracts, you know, made out of, again, butters and oils. Nothing out of alcohol even is sold at our club. And so in some sense, you know, we couldn't have hoped for a better opportunity to challenge these laws, because it wasn't a raid on our store, and while it cost us thousands of dollars, we need to change these laws. And so actually, you know, started on this issue back, the second trial we had, they dropped the charge of trafficking cannabis right away, but the Crown proceeded to convict me of trafficking cannabis resin for the food and skin products, because the regulations only allow for dried marijuana. And any extract is illegal. And if you look at the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, it'll have cannabis marijuana there. Then it has cannabis resin, which is normally what hash charges are applied. But it also has THC and CBD as separately listed drugs in the CDSA. And so they charged me with trafficking in cannabis resin, claiming that the resin was in the cookies. And the judge bought it, and she convicted me. I was so mad at my lawyer, the judge, the Crown, that I did the appeal myself. I don't even think I let my lawyer read it before I sent it. I just worked on it and put it off. The Crown, upon reading my arguments, decided that I would at the very least get a new trial, and they conceded to that, and then said, you know, really, we don't want to bother, so let's just drop the whole matter, which frustrated the hell out of me. I pleaded to the Court of Appeal to hear the matter, but they said that the federal government didn't want to fight me anymore. The charges were being dropped. There was nothing the court could do. And I told them that we needed to resolve this matter, because it was an issue that needed to be dealt with. And if we didn't do it today, we were going to be doing it in the future. And here we are. So I knew a little bit about what we were getting into when Owen was charged with these offenses, and to me, it was an opportunity. When I started the Buyers Club 17 years ago, the whole point was to change the law, and there's no realistic means of doing it other than to get arrested and to convince judges it was unconstitutional. So, like I say, this trial has actually been, for us, an incredible opportunity, not just to challenge the law, but to educate the public about the benefits of using cannabis as an edible or topical product. It's something that we've done, I think, a great job with our local media and this particular trial, bringing it to light that these alternatives are available and that they're potentially healthier. And so, and it's something actually for a lot of medical problems, eating cannabis is a lot better than smoking for a number of different reasons. And so,
Are you differentiating at all between the fresh cannabis or the cooked cannabis? Like, when you make tinctures and that, are they being heated? I just started eating it raw last night, and I think maybe medicinally that might be the best way we can get it. You don't get high if you don't heat it, but you get all the medicine.
Yes. All of our products are made with plants that have been dried first for different reasons. Like our club doesn't run any of the grow-offs. They're all run by independent growers.
I think dry can still be raw, depending
well,
how they dry it.
But there's all sorts of ways to prepare it. We have 30 food and skin products at our club. We make some of them out of leaf, some of them out of stalk, and some of them out of bud. If you do not decarboxylate it, which is the heating process that converts the THC acid over to THC, then you have a less psychoactive effect.
Yeah.
And that's whether you juice it or whether you infuse it without applying heat. You can do a cold infusion. For example, we take stock, like when we sell our bud, we will pick the stock out and put it in a jar, and we will put a jar of stock and olive oil from one moon to the next moon, and then do a cold infusion from that, and then we sell that in Kamut puffs, it's just Kamut puff squares. I had to pick something, but so there are ways. There's so many different things that you can do. It's hard. Even the 30 food and skin products, we could triple that because there's so many different ways you could do things. But
I'm just wondering if you see any difference at all between the raw, whether it's dried or not, and the cooked in the effect on the healing.
We certainly have, and we've learned with Dr. Hornby about this process of decarboxylating over the years. And so when we first met him, we were cooking it in a double boiler for about 12 hours, which was doing a pretty good job of extracting it. But it wasn't actually converting much of the THC acid over to THC. Thinking about it, probably like about 10 or 15% was converted to THC. And so we learned from Dr. Hornby. We started decarboxylating our first attempts. We thought heating it like in an oven, like he said, was just crazy. So we wouldn't do it as much as he said. So at first we cooked it at 250 for half an hour. And we didn't tell the members, we changed the recipe. We just experimented on the entire membership and just sold them these enhanced cookies. And they came back like, routinely and said like, what did you do with those cookies? Like, now I need a half a cookie or whatever. It just like the dosage and medical benefits went up dramatically for people. And then we did another series of tests with Dr. Hornby and realized that there is still a fair percentage of cannabinoid that weren't being converted from their acid form. So we bumped it up to 300. And again, didn't tell the membership that we've done anything different. And again, had, hands down, reports from most people that were regular cookie users that the dosage had somehow gone up. And so I forget at what point we actually cut the size of the cookie in half because it becomes so much stronger just by decarboxylating it. And so, it's something that I recognize the benefits of non-decarboxylated cannabis, in particular for people that don't want the psychoactive effect. In fact, now we're getting strains. We have one strain called Nordal that's very high in CBD, very low in THC. Doesn't get you high at all. And so, for people like me, it's not even worth smoking. It would be worthless on a commercial market. But we have a lot of members who are in significant pain that the edibles might not work for whatever reason, but they can smoke this and they don't have any kind of mental stimulation, but they get the medical benefits. And so that's something that we're able to provide in a smoke form, and we are considering, hoping that we have enough of it that we can make an edible product out of it as well. But when it comes to standardizing and putting edible products out on our menu, there's a lot of factors, and I don't think we have a stable enough supply to do that yet. But, certainly,
Got enough incentive to make it.
no. But when it comes to juicing, there's incredible potential for using the raw plant as a juice form as well. Last summer, we went to northern Saskatchewan, as mentioned to Debbie earlier. I have a friend with Good Seed Hemp, is a company that grows seed there. We went to visit a 40-acre hemp field, and he had a few fields that hadn't produced very well. A bunch of canola had come up, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just going to go harvest the canola that had come up there." So we're like, "Well, hey, mind if we go pick out all the hemp plants from that?" So we grabbed about 50 or 60 small, immature, like they're 2 weeks from being fully mature seeds. So, but we grabbed them and we juiced them on the property, and it was incredibly strong. You could tell from the small dose of it that it had a lot of medicine in it. It tasted a lot like a stalk, if you take a stalk and kind of chew on it, but times 1,000, like just really intense kind of green. So you needed a chaser or something after to get the taste out of your mouth. We had Dr. Hornby test the juice. It had about 5% THC, 0.63%, or sorry, 0.6%, 0.63% THC, about 5% CBD, which is not a psychoactive drug, but is very much anti-inflammatory and carcinogenic. There's a lot of benefits from CBD and CBD acid. I should say it's actually CBD acid because it's not converted. So that would be an incredible non-psychoactive medicine. And so we tried to convince the farmers, and I think did a good job, that this was a potential source of income. Because at this point, the seed is the only thing that they harvest. They basically till the leaf back into the ground, and the fiber's so damn strong they burn it, because otherwise it won't break down fast enough for them in the field. So it's just like an incredible resource that's being wasted. But even still, from the seed, they make 3 or 4 times more per acre than they can off anything else that they grow. So it's, there isn't, a huge amount of incentive, but there's all this potential. So what we tried to convince them to do, and hopefully, they will at some point. Oh no, wait, now that I think, okay, yeah, sorry, I'm putting a few things together. It's, we convinced them that you should put a hopper on the side of the combine, because until last year, the combine would go through and cut plants down, shake off the seeds, and then the rest of the plant would just get thrown down onto the ground. We convinced them to get a hopper for the side of the combine, so that every couple 100 yards it would fill up, and they'd dump it into a wagon or whatever, and then they could, juice it and freeze it right away, and then sell like little frozen wheatgrass kind of packets. So we were convincing them to do this, but it's been sidetracked a little bit by Dr. Hornby. When we were visiting this farm, we connected with a local enthusiast who actually knew the farmers, and he's also a medical marijuana grower and right into the genetics and stuff of cannabis. And so we put them kind of together a little bit, and he came to see the hemp field with us and was really inspired. When you go see a hemp field, the first thing you notice is not just the beautiful size, but the smell hits you. It smells like a beautiful cannabis field, and it should smell. And the terpenes and the flavonoids that aren't psychoactive, but are very medicinal, are obvious when you go and look at them. You can see resin glands on the surface, and it's really apparent that there's medicine in them. And so when the week after we were there's this prairie cup, I guess, and Dr. Hornby and this other guy went to the hemp farm and talked about what was happening. and I guess they colluded into making hemp hash. Apparently they made 10 pounds of hash out of the hemp. I guess sold it to Dr. Hornby at $1,000 a pound. I'm not getting any of this information from Paul, by the way. This is all from the farmer. Paul's like pulling teeth to get info from sometimes. Anyways, the cut was $3,000 to our friend who made the hash and set it up, and $7,000 for the farmers. So that's $700 a pound for the farmers. They don't get that for the seed or anything else. So they've almost come to see the hash as being more valuable than the seed, or equally as valuable as the seed. And so Dr. Hornby's selling these little capsules made of this hash, and apparently the results are quite fantastic, as they should be. The ratio would be comparable to the one that came from the juice, you know, where the CBD would be about 8 times more than the THC. And so it's something that, you know, I'm absolutely convinced of the medical benefits of this. And so are they, to the point where this year, they're renting a curling arena and they're putting nets all over. Yeah.
Oh, tell me which town. Please tell me which town.
Well, I don't know all the details yet. You know, it's still being put together.
It could be my relatives. You know, I'm sorry. You know, you gotta let me know which town.
Well, you know,
privately,
Blake
whatever.
knows all the details. Is, you know, so.
Pardon me?
Blake, my friend I was talking to earlier, with
Oh.
Seed Hemp, you know, because it's
Yeah.
his family's farm, right? Like, they're all doing it. So Dr. Hornby's not actually in the loop so much. He's just going to be the person they sell it to. They're over there scheming about how they can make hash out of hemp and get hemp from all these other farmers to make hash. And,
Is it Tisdale? Anyway, I'm going back to Saskatchewan. I need to know
but,
this farm.
it was a really exciting venture for us, and something that we're very happy to have been involved in from the beginning and help put these people together to start making some of these medicines, because the potential from hemp is just incredible. So, so I kind of went off on a side tangent there, but yeah. So the Buyers Club. Back to it for a sec. Yeah, so last year our trial started for the bakery. We argued that basically the medical marijuana access regulations were unconstitutional and that they should be amended to obviously allow for any kind of extract. We brought in Dr. David Pate, who I got to know in part from the watermelon decision. You may not know watermelon, but she's still sells hot cookies on Wreck Beach. Got busted doing that a while ago, and Dr. Pate testified and got her off. And so I actually used him in my cookie arrest as well. I wasn't able to avoid those charges. Yeah, my cookie giveaway, what had happened was the Crown changed their tactics after the watermelon decision and stopped charging people with edibles with cannabis resin, because it was hard for them to prove it was resin that was in the cookies, but they could prove that it was THC. So I was actually one of the first in Canada convicted of trafficking THC for my pocket giveaway. Yeah, so we pulled in Dr. Pate from California. He was a bazooka in court, I guess, if you think of it in military terms. He was just brilliant on the stand, testifying to the safety of this plant, and that there was no possible way that any amount of THC could kill an individual. And so it didn't matter if you were able to make an extract that was 100% THC, it's not going to kill people. And there's a lot of other drugs on the market that can kill people. Aspirin can kill people. Too much water can kill people. Too much THC will knock you out. That's it. And so he was very convincing to the judge, to the point where like 5 pages of the judge's decision were quoting evidence from Dr. Pate, which is a stark contrast to the evidence provided by the scientific witness from Health Canada. They couldn't have failed more in their defense. It was stunning, and I must give a lot of credit to Kirk Tusaw, our lawyer, because he's got some great instincts. In this case, Dr. Abramovich entered in his affidavit and swore that this was his statement. And Kirk just started picking them apart and asking, where he came up with this information. And we found out through admissions that in fact his conclusions weren't his writing, his conclusions were cut and paste from a memo sent to him by his boss from another department in a non-scientific position. And so it was quite clear that he was being given a political mandate, not a scientific mandate in the courtroom. The judge was quite obviously distraught. We didn't strike down the evidence, though, because we didn't want to give the Crown any chance of appealing. So we allowed his evidence to stand, but the judge accorded it very little weight because, as he said, the conclusions weren't even his. So how much of an opinion did he really have? And so it really, took all the steam or weight out of the Crown's position of any potential harms that had to be concerned about. And so it was something where, just based on the evidence, the judge had a very clear decision to make, which was that the MMA are unconstitutional. And so he struck the law down. But that is for patients that have Health Canada licenses, not for the general public. And so because we sell at the Buyers Club to people that don't have Health Canada licenses, that may have a permanent physical disability or disease, but not a doctor's recommendation, the judge decided that there's still a need for a jury trial. And so that was going to be happening this month, actually this week. I was supposed to be in court, but the judge decided to or not the judge, the Crown decided that they didn't want to proceed. Actually what happened was the Crown that we were dealing with got sick and went in the hospital, and his senior lawyer looked at the case and decided that it wasn't worth proceeding. And so the senior Crown has decided to have the charges essentially, I shouldn't say dropped, but Owen's been acquitted. They entered no criminal evidence into court, so that Owen's been found not guilty. And now they've proceeded to appeal, just something we want to do. We want to go all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. And so going to the BC Court of Appeal is a step along the way. We want to make a very strong and binding decision on the federal government. Because at this point, the lower court decision hasn't had that much of an impact. It's binding on other cases, so if anybody else gets busted with a cannabis resin or THC charge at this point, if there's any medical application, they can have their court case put off until the proceedings here are done. And there are a few cases across the country that are being delayed until these proceedings are concluded. But really not that many. These kinds of charges are rather rare. And so it's something that not only has Health Canada refused to change their regulations, but the new regulations that have come in have also been very clear to say that dried marijuana only is legally available, and that extracts, honey oil, hashish, or butters and stuff, they are still outside of the regulations. And that's something that needs to change. And I think, hopefully the Supreme Court of Canada, will have the power to tell the government that any and all regulations in this matter need to include cannabis in all of its components. So hopefully we get to the Supreme Court so that they can make such a strong binding decision, because it's kind of frustrating proving that the MMA are unconstitutional and then them just creating a whole new set of regulations, so that we'd almost have to start all over again if we can't find the Supreme Court or get the Supreme Court to do something. So yeah, so before I get to the new regulations, I guess I should mention a little bit about what happened after the court case, because after, it was Friday, April 13th that we struck the law down. About a month after that, I had Canada Revenue Agency come looking for me, because I had admitted in the trial that we weren't paying any taxes. And the judge thought that was important enough to note in his decision. So apparently the police took the court decision down to Canada Revenue Agency and essentially said, we can't bust this guy anymore, so you may as well get your taxes. And it was something where when they came in the door, my immediate reaction was actually I was quite happy, because for me, it was something that I saw as being a step towards legitimacy on, many levels. And even though the guys at Revenue Canada were like, "Oh, we're not here to give you a license. We're not making this legal." I'm like, "Yeah, but we're going to be paying our taxes." And it was you guys coming to us to help us do that. And so whether they wanted to be involved in that step towards legitimacy or not is irrelevant. We've made them involved in that step towards legitimacy, because part of what I did was realize immediately that this was our chance to finally incorporate. When I started the club, I lived in a van. The idea of keeping books and doing all this record keeping for the government was just ridiculous. And so it was something that from the very beginning we actually wanted to incorporate as a co-op. I kind of got this little ideal in my head that co-ops are an amazing model to go by. And so for years I would describe it as an unincorporated co-op. I considered myself an employee of the members and the staff and the growers. It wasn't my business. I worked for everybody else, in my opinion. But I guess technically it was my business, and when the shit came down, the taxes fell on me. So I guess it was about $250,000 in total in unpaid HST and employee deductions. But actually, that was kind of minimal, because that was only for the first 9 months not even the first like 6 months of last year, or 8 months, and about a year and a half of employee deductions. They could have gone after me for more, but they realized that no matter how big the bill was, they weren't going to get it. The bigger they made the bill, the more ridiculous it looked. So they actually did their very best to keep the number kind of low. If they would have treated me like everybody else, it would have been well over $1 million they would have been coming after me for. Our club's grown quite substantially. We started last year doing about $6,000 a day, and it's grown to about $8,000 a day. So we do about $250,000 a month in business right now, which is $25,000 a month in taxes that we're paying. So it's a substantial amount of money going to the government. It's a substantial amount of medicine going through a door, and we're proving, every day that we're in operation, that we're nothing but a benefit to our community, to the individuals that we serve, to our neighbors, to the community at large. In the taxpaying, we have done nothing but contribute and be of benefit. So in some ways, it's a stiff price to pay, but we've gotten some very good press, and it's paid off to the point now where the police are respecting the cards and the members. Before they weren't. So I guess the sale happened October 1st. I sold the club for $4,200, and it's something that has been just an incredible transformation. I got a really good group there finally, so it's been a perfect time to kind of pass the reins over to them and give them more control of the space. And so it's been and by growing or passing it over while the club is growing has been important too, because it's not contracting. We're not kind of worrying about our budget. If anything, we're trying to figure out how to kind of spend the resources of the club, because we are growing quite rapidly. The court case, for example, last year has just made the club grow phenomenally. I think we've had 1 month in the last 12 where less than 40 people have joined. And so, that's like 450 or 480 just last year. I grew up in a town of 250, so that's like 2 villages of sick people that joined our club in the last year. So we're one of the largest nonprofits on Vancouver Island, and otherwise, quite the going force. So the other thing I'm doing right now is I'm forming committees within the group. We've got a board of directors now. We have a monthly staff meeting. We formed a finance, policy, and a membership committee. Now I'm in the process of forming a committee on Health Canada, a committee for research and development, a committee for healthcare. I have a psychiatrist that's going to chair that committee, and I want to tie us up into all the different, both Western and alternative healthcare sources that are in town. And then another committee on events, like we want to just like have picnics and things for the membership, not just fundraising stuff, but stuff that the members can do for fun. Because we've got a lot of them, and even if we just organize like going together to see different bands or sporting events or all sorts of other things that are happening. We don't have to make our own event. We just, we've got now 4,500 members of our club, not all active, but again, we're one of the largest nonprofits in Victoria, so the events committee's got a lot of potential to just enhance the community atmosphere that we already have there. So, yeah, so by the end of that, I'll have 7 committees, a staff, and a board meeting every month. But, and I also have severed myself from the club. The other neat thing was this happened right around the time my book was being put out. So I've switched. I'm not an employee of the Cannabis Buyers Club. I'm not a director. I'm a volunteer. I make my money now selling my book with Hempology101, getting donations, whatever it takes. I've basically taken home $500 a month. And while I'm under bankruptcy proceedings, as far as I'm concerned, that's more than enough because I just got to eat. Because I got a sweet deal for all the pot I want from the Buyers Club for life. So. One of the little perks of the sale. So, I don't really need a lot to go about and do my work. And so I'm very happy to have severed myself from the Buyers Club as much as possible. And people can no longer claim that I'm in it for the money. That was a very frustrating statement that people would make because I've put everything I can back into it. Anyway, new regulations. So yeah, so then after all this happened, the federal government announced that they're going to be changing the MMAR to the MMPR, and it's an incredibly drastic change for patients that grow their own medicine or have someone grow it for them because they're planning on eliminating that part of the program entirely. I refer to the MMPR as kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good part is the commercial producers part. For those people that can't grow their own or can't get a designated grower, the current system right now with prairie plant systems is just abhorrent. That's why clubs like mine exist. We wouldn't exist if everybody could grow their own or have someone grow it for them. We're there because there's people that can't or won't, or for whatever reason, it's just not possible. Those people should be able to go to the government in some sense and get it off a commercial producer, but the current system just doesn't allow for that. At least not for good cannabis, but the next one will. In fact, the next one has a lot of incentives for the commercial producers to not only produce very high-grade cannabis, but to invest in research and development, to get a drug identification number, which would allow insurance companies to pay for it, so it wouldn't have to come out of people's pockets, which would dramatically increase the revenues that those companies would be able to make. The new program, the doctors write a referral to a specific company. They don't write you a 5 gram a day license that allows you to buy wherever you want. They have to write for a specific company, like Ross's Gold. Let's just beat that one down a little. So, if you wanted to buy from Ted's Gold, and you had a 5 gram a day license for Ross's Gold, you actually have to go back to your doctor, cancel the first one, and then write up 2 new scripts, one for 2.5 grams for Ross's Gold, and then 2.5 grams for my gold. And so there's a lot of incentive for the specific companies in this program to make a direct connection with doctors, to get doctors to sign for their specific medicine. In particular, with these new CBD strains that I mentioned earlier, these companies are going to develop these strains and promote them to physicians as non-psychoactive strains of smoked cannabis. That's going to be one of their main selling points to begin with to the medical community, as we have, pot that doesn't get your patients high, but it will ease their medical problems. There'll be some companies focused specifically on those sorts of strains and medicines. So, but certainly, a lot of other companies will be focused on, having a range of medicines available so that you don't want to get scripts from different companies. You get a script from Ross's Gold, and you'd be able to get your selection, and therefore it would make it somewhat easier. And so there's a lot of incentive for strain development, for promotions, to educate the medical community about the safety and effectiveness of this medicine. And from what I can see as well, it's not as difficult to get a commercial license as many of us suspected. Before these regulations came in, we figured there'd be a host of requirements, including gamma radiation and all sorts of other things. At this point, and my interpretation could be wrong, but it might not be much more than passing some basic security checks to prove that you're not the Hells Angels or dating one, because you actually even have to have your partners go through the security check. But if you pass the security checks and you got cameras set up around your property for security, and it's in a commercial area, not in a home or where somebody's living, so it could be like an agricultural land reserve property, just as long as it's not attached to your actual home. I'm looking at this system along with some other people at helping to create small businesses to get into this market. Because it might not be as difficult as people have suspected. It might be that we're going to be able to, get anyone that's got, something that's not in a residential area, but has an outbuilding and is interested, they might be able to get into the market. Whether or not they can sell their product and do that end of things, though, might be difficult. We're not sure how much they're going to charge for these licenses, so that's going to be another factor, right? If it's $10,000 a license, well, right away, like, eliminates a large number of people that might go for a smaller situation. But if it's a couple $100, then, or even $1,000, that's not something that would be, out of the question for a lot of people that might be happy to just grow for themselves and, their small community of people that they know around them. And so we're at the club actually wanting to help a couple of our growers get these licenses so that we can see how it's done from the very beginning and work along with them towards that. Ironically, that would mean that as of next April 1st, when the new regulations come into effect, they would become our competition. We wouldn't be able to buy their herb anymore. They'd only be able to sell it through the legal mechanisms in the MMPR, which mean, at this point, nothing but mail order. And that's where we start getting into the bad part, that dispensaries are left out of this, and the method of distribution is mail order, which for a lot of people is not very convenient. If you live in a homeless shelter, for example, you live in the Salvation Army, you get kicked out if you smell like pot, let alone you get it mailed. There's a lot of other complications for people that are in, kind of questionable housing situations, and so. But unfortunately, as far as I'm concerned, the government would not strike down these regulations as unconstitutional for that. If you understand our charter, there's a number of sections in it, but even if you've proven, say, a Section 7 violation of your rights, the next step for the court is to actually look at Section 1, which determines whether or not it's in the public interest to have these rules and regulations, and some people's rights can be violated if it's for public peace, public security, public order. And so, it's unfortunately my position that people that are homeless, that consideration wouldn't be enough for the courts to strike down the laws as unconstitutional, even though it would mean great hardship on a lot of people to have no access. And so, yeah, dispensaries aren't included in the original writing, except to say that provinces have the power to write provincial rules that would allow for doctors, nurse practitioners, hospitals, or pharmacists to have a dispensary. And so we're really hoping that an NDP government here will want to work with the existing medical cannabis community to put something like that in place. Although time is short and there really isn't a consensus in the dispensary movement to do that, so we've got our work cut out for us. But we either have to do it or we're going to get, in my opinion, somehow shut down eventually. These, we've been able to exist in kind of parallel to these current regulations, but that's partly because they're so dysfunctional, and the courts have struck them down. After the Murdoch decision of a couple weeks ago and other court cases, I don't think this new system is going to be struck down. As I said, the supply end of things seems to be fairly well taken care of, and if the doctors are signing this new program, the access arguments won't fly, and at that point, these new regulations might be constitutionally sound in such a way that the clubs, if getting busted, won't be able to justify staying open. And so there's a great concern that these new regulations will squeeze clubs out in a way that the last ones did not. And at the same time, there's this general excitement in the movement towards legalization that's happening outside of Canada even faster. And so, for many of us in the industry, it's kind of now or never. We're either going to get in into these, new regulations, or, face prosecution, which a number of patients are going to be doing as well. And we, next April when these laws come into effect, we're not going to be in compliance. We recognize that. We'd like to be, but there's not much of a realistic chance. So it's kind of ugly for clubs like ours, but the situation's been ugly for a long time. It's kind of bad. It's really ugly for the patients, I should say. What's happening, taking away patients' rights to grow is abhorrent, it's deplorable, and is a huge step back from the direction that we should be going. I understand there's problems with the designated grower program. I think what they've done is switch the designated grower program into a fully commercialized system, which I think is an improvement if you don't take away the patient's rights to grow. That they should have that alternative first and foremost. And if they can't grow it for themselves, then getting it from a commercial producer makes sense. It's going to be standardized, it's going to be tested. Every commercial producer is going to have a quality assurance personnel. There's going to be insurance companies and all sorts of other legal mechanisms to ensure that the cannabis that's coming out of grow ops for patients meets all the standards, mold testing and whatever else. THC content will be known, which is something like, dispensaries like mine were already going towards. Like, it's really not fair to sell a medicine where you don't know what's in it and say, oh yeah, this isn't indica, but I don't know what's in it. Like, that was an evolution we were going to. So that's something that, patients, they should know what's in their medicine. They should know that it's safe. And the current system doesn't do anything like that at all. The current system's, quite fractured. And I sort of joke to people like, what other license do you get from the government for free? Well, there's not many. And certainly, not many that are licenses to print money like this one. And if they had a system that was really, meant to encourage responsibility, much like a driver's license, it's a privilege that the government grants you after you prove that you can do it safe, after you pay a couple bucks to keep the program going. And there's, systems in place to ensure that people are driving safely. And if you get caught driving unsafe, then there's punishments that are laid out as well. The current regulations have got nothing like that at all. It's really quite a shit show, which is why we've not participated at all. But these new regulations, for the most part, with the exception of not allowing dispensaries, do make sense. And even then, when you read them, it's like, and the way that it works, provinces really deliver health care. It might have been difficult, if not impossible, for the federal government to write in these regulations how dispensaries should work, when ultimately the provincial authorities are the ones that would be managing and dealing with these. And so, knowing a little bit about what I do, the bureaucrats within Health Canada, while they didn't put dispensaries in place here, they've done as much as they could to give it room to allow provinces to do it. Although again, we're quite lucky we're in one of the only provinces where the provincial government might even consider it. And again, that's with the change of government, not even the one we have. So, yeah, so it's really quite a mess. And the movement's not really together on it. What we've seen, or what I've seen, is there's a lot of people that are wanting to make money off the new program, and they're not concerned as much about patients losing their right to grow their own medicine. I don't see it that way. I see this as being a huge step backwards and a direct assault against patients and their rights, one that we have to fight tooth and nail. And so after the regulations came out, I gave it a few weeks before I decided what to do. I was kind of hoping that other people would put some effort together to fight the new regs. And there is. There's a coalition, a repeal coalition against the MMPR. Can't remember the name exactly, but John Conroy, a lawyer over in the mainland, is leading a few legal actions. They're trying to have some kind of injunction put in place to stop the program from either coming into effect or to allow licenses to be continually issued. And in a way, this is more defensive there's a class action lawsuit that they're putting together as well. Unfortunately, the class action only really comes into effect after everyone's lost their license, after they can prove the expenses that they've incurred for setting up a grow-off and not being able to use it anymore, and after they can prove that they've had to pay extraordinary amounts of money from these new companies. And they would have to like pay that money to these companies and then prove that they can't just say, oh, I would use 10 grams a day, so it would cost me this much. They have to say, it cost me this much, now you have to compensate me because I used to get this for free. So it's something where the class action lawsuit might have a good chance of success, but it's only after a lot of pain and hardship, and the government might just end up like paying off the people that lost their licenses instead of reinstating the program. So the class action and the injunction, have that there's some hope in there, but at the same time, the government might very well be able to just go ahead with this new program. As long as it meets constitutional standards, it will stay. But in my opinion, we need to do everything we can, again, to fight this tooth and nail. So the first thing I decided to do is take advantage of this time for comments. We have till the end of this month to comment about these changes. And that's not just patients, that's like everybody. And so we decided, or I decided, to have rallies 1 week before the end of comments, and to encourage rallies across Canada. We sort of have some experience with this when we were fighting the mandatory minimums when they came into place. It's something where, we've never organized a national campaign at this point, but neither has anybody else. So traveling around the country has been really good for me this year because it really helps set the stage for what we're doing. Right now, I believe we have over 90 different offices across Canada that people have committed to rally at. Some of them are going to be quite large with hundreds of people. Some of them might be smaller and in very cold areas. So, February isn't a good time to protest, but nevertheless, people are very upset and very committed to doing something about this. So, it's been good to give people a chance to focus. We're not doing it in just the large urban centers or Parliament Hill. We're wanting people to spread out into their communities as much as possible. I don't think gathering us all together is what we need to do here. For those that are interested and activated enough to do something, what we need to do is create events where people can engage with the public and convince other people that they as well need to stand up and do something. And so the best way that I've seen to do that is to have people standing around, walking around the streets with pamphlets, with newspapers and information, and engaging with people that are willing to engage with them on the street. And so again, there'll be some of these rallies with larger people, there'll be statements and media and stuff, but ultimately what we want to do is to bring people together to try and encourage more comments from the general public, so there'll be little handouts for people, and yeah, it's something that we realize is not going to likely have an impact. The federal government has pretty much committed themselves to going this direction, but nevertheless, we need to build allies in our own communities. A lot of these places, patients don't know each other at all. Most places across the country, there aren't groups in existence that are doing anything about this matter. So this is going to be a chance for people to meet others in their own community for the first time even that are wanting to do something. This is going to be a series of 3 rallies. We want to fight this all the way. So the next one is October 1st. October 1st is the day they stopped issuing licenses to grow. So we want to protest on that day. And then the final day of protest will be April 1st next year, which is the day the new regulations come into effect. And so we want to protest all the way, in a sense, kind of setting the stage for the next federal election. We want the future government, hopefully being made up of some kind of NDP liberal monster, that they will be open to changes in the regulations that would reinstate patients' rights to grow. That might be the most realistic and practical way to have this come back. I'm not convinced that the injunction or class action would do that. I think that this is a political decision, and that we need to convince the political powers that be that this is the wrong direction to go. And so we've certainly got our work cut out for us, but for those that rely upon this medicine and have learned the benefits of growing their own, this is our one and only chance to really stand up and speak out. So, yeah, so we've got, Fight the MMPR webpage, and Facebook's been quite useful in organizing these things. Yeah, and I do have a few posters here. I've got like 4 for Powell River. I know that's not much, but if people wanted to take one of these and put them up, by all means, please do so. I'm going to finish with, oh, yeah.
I will.
Okay, cool. I'm going to finish with just a brief plug for Dana Larson's Sensible BC campaign. As many know, Dana has been working very hard for months now trying to build up a campaign. And he's been actually really quite brilliant, I think, in some of the strategies. Like this fall, he sort of did a test run, doing everything but actually getting the campaign off the ground in order to find out all the different steps and processes that were necessary. So at this point, the signature collecting that's going on, and I do have extra pieces of paper if people want to take one to get them filled out, is in preparation for this fall. September, October, and part of November is when this campaign is going to make or break it. Because they've got to collect, I think it's 400,000 signatures in the province of BC. And they're in, some in each region. It's not that they can get them all in downtown Vancouver. And so it's something that in September, October, and November, many of us are going to be committing as much time as possible just out door knocking or standing on street corners, doing whatever we can. I've referred to decriminalization as a lawyer's term for job protection. Legalization is the answer. Decriminalization is a step in the right direction, but it is not the final goal. And so, for years I would criticize decriminalization, but realistically, this campaign is one of the very few opportunities that we have to do something physically about these laws. Unless you go out like me and get arrested, there's not many opportunities to help change law. And so this is not only critical to stop the police from enforcing, but will send a huge message across the country. And the timing of it's pretty good. The actual, the collection of signatures is this fall, and then, I forget when the vote is exactly, but the vote will be just before the next federal election. And so when we've decriminalized cannabis here in British Columbia, and other things happening, in Washington State, Colorado, who knows how many places it will be legal down south by then, it will, I'm certain, become an election issue for the very first time. It really hasn't been before, but I really think with Justin Trudeau and others, stating that legalization is part of their platform, I really think that, this next federal election is critical and key and will be the time that we can make the change. And Dana's campaign sets that up beautifully. And so it's something that, again, I'm personally going to be devoting a lot of my time to this fall, and I hope that you guys can as well. So I guess we've got some time for questions. I've talked upon a lot of subjects. I'll just talk a little bit about the stuff at the back. Please grab as many newspapers as you think you can take. I do need some for tomorrow for Powell River, so I don't want to clean myself out, Gibson's. Don't want to clean myself out entirely, but I do have more of this new issue, so if you know of people or places where you can take a small stack of my newspapers and just leave them to hand out, by all means. I do have to charge some money for the handouts that I got my university course handouts back there. The full package is $3. I think the Cannabis Carols are $1. And I do have buttons and stickers, and actually I got a bunch of t-shirts there too, if anybody's interested. I guess one little request before I open it up to questions. I don't think I've done a great job promoting in Gibson's tomorrow. If any of you know people in Gibson's that you could help spread the word to, I even forgot to mention on the radio show last night, but anyway, if you can help put the word out that I'm in Gibson's. I've never even been there, so I don't really know that many people. So it's gonna be fun. But
Where is it?
Somewhere in
I'm
Gibson's.
an organizer.
yeah, it's. Oh, I'd have to look up online. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I'll try and find the answer to that right now.
Sydney. You know, they promoted it in
Hold on.
Sydney. A hemp store.
Cool.
They were promoting it, and that's when I found you, actually.
Yeah, I've had to arrange so many places. I can't remember them all. It's a cute little hall. Yeah, I didn't even bring a poster. Oops. Okay. So, any questions I can answer?
May I take a moment? You spoke about Normal, the Normal organization.
Yep.
And tomorrow I'm invited to a birthday party for one of the early founders of Normal in Vancouver. Her name is Molly Murphy Faulkner. She's 88 years old on Sunday. And back in the 70s that you spoke about, her World War II husband got busted for smoking pot. That's why they decided to start Normal in Vancouver. And her husband, George, was the one that always asked Trudeau, do you smoke pot, Mr. Trudeau? To which Trudeau replied, never in Canada. And then I was working in Fort McMurray, and Murphy and George did the same thing. They exposed that there was marijuana seeds in the bird seeds that were being sold in the bird seed in Walmart. And she hooked a rug that was stolen from their Vancouver office. But the rug said, liberate marijuana. I have a picture of her and everything. So if anybody knows Molly Murphy, she's 88 years old tomorrow. So, and I'm glad to see you here.
They're in Cardinal Hall
Thank you.
in Gibson's, wherever that is.
Cardinal Hall?
Thanks. So you guys got more questions here for me? Oh, I should say our product guide, I mentioned we have 30 food and skin products. It's online, our recipe book, every little trick that we know about how to do things. So got a lot of good topicals as well on our product list. So that's a good resource for people.
So that's at a Hempology website, is it?
Actually, you got to link over to the Buyers Club site for it. But if you go to the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club, you'll be able to find it off there.
An excellent talk. You've answered all my questions, almost. Are you looking for more people to promote it in Saskatchewan? Like the hemp, you were talking about those farmers that, were looking, are they looking for more land? Are they looking for more support?
I don't have enough
growing?
contact with Blake to know kind of some of the logistics for it. I really only get to see him, once every couple of months, so I'm not sure what help they would need, if any, at this point. Right now it's the middle of the winter. There's nothing even in the ground, so it's something that I don't really know what their plans for developing, their company.
I'll be getting in
I think it's
touch
still,
with you.
Very early on for them. So
Yeah.
I don't think they have much of a plan either. Just
Okay. Now, me as a medicinal marijuana user, I am quitting smoking. I have decided finally, after 45 years, I'm quitting smoking. It's about time. I use marijuana. I used it when I started smoking it again when I was diagnosed with cancer, because I knew it would help me sleep, which would help me heal my body, helps me with a myriad of things. What I've noticed but I can't remember which strain helped which ailment I deal with. So your dispensary would be able to assist me in that manner? Because I did try the cookies, but I ate too many, then I got sick. So, too much cookie dough. I have to find another way. I like tinctures, so I'm looking for someone who does tinctures.
Okay, well, when it comes to the strain issue,
Yeah.
certainly there's a lot to be said for the difference between indica and sativa. We've tried to determine whether the strains that we sell are more indica dominant or sativa dominant, which is, really at times more of a personal choice. We wish we had the testing to know like which ones had more CBD, for example, than THC. But there are about 70 different cannabinoids, different chemicals similar to THC that can appear in a plant. Each plant contains 6 to 12 of that group of 70 cannabinoids. They all have THC, CBD, CBN, but then they'll have like trace amounts of these other cannabinoids, these different chemicals, which is why each strain is different, because they'll have different combinations and different ratios of them. And
Do I
so,
get to
and then
test it?
they each have their own terpenes and flavonoids, which also have substantial medical benefit and are really misunderstood, or not, I shouldn't say misunderstood, aren't known as well. Medically speaking, they're a lot harder to study and almost impossible to isolate. I guess each one of us is kind of like a unique strain of human. And so sometimes, people and a plant, or a person and a plant, seem to have this wonderful symbiotic relationship where whatever needs, I haven't discussed the endocannabinoid system, but whatever needs that your endocannabinoid system has, they just seem to be matched perfectly by the cannabinoids present in the plant. That being said, we've learned that mixing strains is generally better than having an individual strain. And that's whether you smoke it, or even more so, I think, when you apply it as a topical and edible. Some of the stuff we make our cookies out of is total bunk. Like if people looked at it, thought that was what we were making our cookies out of, they'd think it was ridiculous. But we mix 2 or 3 kinds of bunk together and it comes out great. And so, because we just use big fan leaves and stuff in our cookies, people often think you need like the bud to make edibles, and the fan leaves have got very high concentrations of CBD, and still about 60% of the THC that's available in bud. So it's not a high enough concentration that it bothers smoking, but it's still got a lot of great medicine in the leaf products. And so what we've learned is actually more often either the combination of more than one strain, again, whether you're smoking it or eating it, and to be mixing it up because you develop a tolerance to any one specific cannabinoid profile. So, if you use, and there are some strains and some people that seem to be able to last forever and they smoke time warp till the cows come home, and that's great. Time warp's amazing. It seems to have that kind of lasting power for people. But, most times individuals develop a tolerance to a strain really within days of constant use, right?
Yeah,
And so I've often argued that the best use of the plant for someone is to learn whether indica or sativa works for particular moments, right? Because, you wake up in the morning, you might not want to smoke an indica right away. You might want to smoke a sativa, just to get yourself up and running. Some people are so sore in the morning that they have to smoke an indica just to get moving, but they can't keep smoking it or they won't do anything. They'll smoke the indica to get out of bed, and then they'll switch over to a sativa to keep the day going. Some of our food products are designed like that. Like we have products made out of bud that aren't as much of a muscle relaxant. The ones made out of leaf are a muscle relaxant. So we sell some cookies, we call them daytime cookies, because a lot of our members want to function. There's 0.1 of a gram cooked in each one of them.
Yeah.
And so it's something that, people can regulate their dose with, and, they can eat them, and then they can look after their kids, do their job, whatever it is. And then at night, they'll switch over to the other edibles. So really, like, no one strain works for any one purpose. Or person, like, there's so many different potential uses of this plant throughout the day even. And so I've often suggested that the best alternative would be for a person to actually have a different strain every day, right, of the month, so that, if you could switch back to the, you know, 30th strain again by the end of the month, but you wouldn't develop a tolerance. And as long as they were generally good indicas or good sativas, and that's what you were looking for, I'm quite convinced that, you're better off with the diversity of strains than you are from finding, like, the one strain that works for you. I often refer to the strain myth, well, I guess in different ways, but it's really for a lot of people an opportunity to market their strain, because there's a lot of money in this. So if you could come up and say, oh, I've got the strain that's good for people with MS, well then, that gives you a lot of marketing potential. And so there's a lot of people that are promoting their specific strains for certain conditions, but it's not that simple.
Would an oil be better to use than, like, hash oil? If I were to continue smoking, say, would I, like, I don't know what.
Well, if you were to continue, really the trick would be to switch to vaporizers. There's so many really great models of vaporizers. Actually, this week we're going to be doing the Hempology lecture on vaporizers, because there's so many different kinds now. There's portable ones that you can plug into your USB port in your computer. They've got them made out of all sorts of different things now, and so that is something that, and for a lot of people, actually even, like, saves them money. They find that they use less and have as good, if not better, medical efficacy from using vaporizers as they do smoking. Now, some of it is dependent upon symptoms, and also dependent upon the quality of machine you have, because the different cannabinoids have different temperatures that they vaporize at. And so CBD, you have to have it at a higher temperature than THC in order to vaporize. And so, we have patients that are clubs that actually, like, the first time they use a volcano, which allows you to change your temperatures, they'll vaporize it the first time and get the THC and get this great headstone, and then they'll crank it up, and then they'll get a bag of CBD heavy, from the same pot. It's just the different temperatures will give them different effects. And so if you get a vaporizer that allows you to adjust for the temperature, well, then that even gives you more options with it. And generally speaking, they're a lot better on one's throat, and yeah, just generally perceived to be healthier. And in a lot of times in places, you can get away with using the vaporizers indoors now. We're hearing more and more stories of people in different medical facilities where the staff are letting people vaporize. I've heard of people on BC ferries watching their kids vaporizing. It's something that is fairly discreet, and if you've got a nice little vaporizer, most people aren't even going to notice that you're doing it. There's a group from Calgary that maybe 2 years ago went to the Treating Yourself Expo in Toronto and started vaporizing on the plane, and didn't get trouble for it. So then they, like, wrote to the WestJet head office and thanked the staff for being so cooperative. At which point WestJet, like, sent a memo to the Transportation Safety Board to see if that was cool. And I'm trying to think where it left off. I think actually after that they stopped, but there was a while there where on WestJet you were allowed to vaporize, no problem. And I know of people doing it anyway, right?
Well, before I let anybody else talk, I have to thank you, Dana, Mark Emery, for all the work you've done. Because what I've been teaching myself especially, and even that Mark Russell, if you run into him, when he had his store, what a wealth of information. He spoke to my children as if they were intelligent human beings. I love that man. And I phoned him to thank him, and he asked me to write a letter to the editor, which I did. I might even find it in my archives. but your work has made me look good in Saskatchewan. And I have an 82-year-old mother of very strong Ukrainian descent who is now sending me articles about members of parliament who are supportive of legalizing marijuana. So thank you. And I thank Dana every time I harass him too. So keep up the good work. And I'll meet you in Victoria. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah. And my mother, you gotta see her.
So
It's gotta be the funniest thing.
I think I'm just going to break it down towards a smoking session here. If there aren't any more questions for the floor, I'm obviously not going anywhere, so I'm happy to hang out and chat. But I'd really like to thank you all for coming here today. It's been a
And
great
thank
pleasure.
you.
Thanks for coming out, everybody.
Don't need to let me know the break, but you're comfortable wherever you stay today.
I am. I'm doing great. Thanks, Mark. Cheers.
Thank you. Aw, thank you. Thanks, guys, for watching. I gotta go take some photographs and stuff, and then I'll be having some highlights and video and a piece up on the website soon. I'm not really gonna go around with the camera because people do want their confidentiality. So that's where we're going. And thank you guys all for watching.